Hi, and welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. My name is Nicky Vaux, and I'm your host. I am a boat owner, a marina owner, a director on the Marina Industries Association, and a huge advocate for boating. In this series, I'm sharing the stories from every nook of the boating industry with the intention of encouraging more women to join me and for more women to get behind the helm too. I want to share the experience and opportunities of boating, of the boating industry, and I want you to join me as I bring the conversations and answer all the questions you've had. Boating is not just for the glamorous and rich and famous. It's full of beautiful and interesting people making the most of our natural environment and getting out there, enjoying the waterways. So let's let off the lines, take over the helm, and escape to the world of boating. So Tracy, welcome to the Boat Princess podcast. It's fantastic to have you here. Tracy Soros is the marina manager at Sydney Boathouse in Rozelle. Now, that's no small facility. She's got 220 boats in storage. That's the dry stack. And then she's got a marina as well to take care of. She's a one busy and very clever chick. So I have invited her to have a chat with us and tell us all about her pathway into the industry, her education, what she does, and give you a little bit of insight into these facilities that she looks after. Tracy, welcome.
Hi, Nikki. Excited to be here.
So, Tracy, you are quite a dynamic member of the boating industry. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to how you achieve that position in this wonderful industry that we work in?
Sure. I guess I kind of fell into the industry. However, I do think that it was probably meant to be because I grew up boating. My parents had a love of boating and it was instilled in me from a very young age. However, after doing about 15 years in property and development, I ended up working for the original owners of the boathouse, and we were doing a number of developments in the CBD, one of which was the Sydney Boathouse, and there was a few things that they wanted to do to lift the place, bring it into sort of the modern era with automation and booking systems. And so they asked me if I would be involved.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It's interesting, the boating industry. We often land in it as opposed to purposely work towards it. And that's kind of one of the purposes of this podcast, to give some people, especially women, some insight into our industry and how they can get into it. Let's go a little bit further back in your life. You are a very capable and confident woman. You say you've landed in this industry, but I do believe nobody lands anywhere. I think they make their own opportunities and they take opportunities when they're presented to them, but you kind of have to do something to make that opportunity appear for yourself as well. And I think as a very confident and capable woman, that usually stems from something in your childhood. I'd love to unpack where you think that strong woman, that confident woman, that capable woman, do you have a mentor or somebody that affected you in your childhood that made you like that?
I think coming from two working parents makes a huge impact on you when you're a child. It instills in you a good work ethic. Both my parents were in boating. They raced speedboats. They competed. They did bridge to bridge. So I spent my childhood on the water. And my mother raced successfully in speedboat racing when I was quite young. So I think growing up in that environment and having younger parents, my parents were quite young, forged a way of not holding back. Sort of anything is possible. If you want to do it, go out and do it. They're both adventurous. And we learnt those sort of skills from a very young age. We were skiing on the river and going to shows and things from a very young age. So I think having that dynamic kind of environment where we spent weekends out doing things, an outdoor upbringing makes a huge difference. And I think too that there was just never any there was never any pressure in my family to be anything in particular. It was more about going out there and having a go and finding your own feet. Both my parents were super supportive in that regard. And yeah, I guess it was more, pardon the cliche, but the world is your oyster. You can just go out and do whatever you want. There wasn't, I guess, having 3 sisters, my dad's ex-military, there probably was a sense of wanting to have some sons, but he got 3 daughters, and so we just grew up doing things that boys would do, and he didn't really hold back in letting us do those sort of, crazy go-karting and driving boats and skiing and things like that maybe traditionally girls weren't encouraged to do, but we certainly were. So I think that just that childhood of, a bit of oomph and gusto just prepared me for life.
It's interesting when you say that. I've suddenly realised that I'm the same, that my dad had 2 daughters, but he was a keen sailor and I was exactly the same. He dragged me on the boat and made me do what I did on just crewing on a dinghy. And yeah, it's you mentioned the bridge to bridge. Can you explain what that is?
It's a ski race where you go extremely fast, and it's from one bridge in the Hawkesbury to the other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's been a long time, so I haven't done anything in my adulthood. But as a child, I do remember watching it. And there's many photos and videos, the ones that project onto the wall, showing my age, but of my parents competing and participating in those events.
See, that's great fun, isn't it? And I think that's a wonderful thing about boating for kids. It's such a different activity to do, and I think it's a lot of skill sets going into boating as a child. You learn a lot of different things. So I think boating for kids and families is a fantastic activity. So tell me about moving from the property industry into the boating industry. Was there a big difference you saw there?
Huge, yeah, a huge difference. I mean, look, this site is relatively new. The concept in Sydney is relatively new. I know that that's dry boat storage is relatively new in New South Wales and in Sydney Harbour. We're not a marina that's been there for 50 odd years. So we're kind of very new at our infancy, and part of growing was, sort of coming to terms with the fact that we couldn't do everything manually. We couldn't book 50, 60 boats manually. We needed systems in place. The owners at the time recognised that, and there was a little bit of change management happening at the time where I became involved. And so they just needed someone to spearhead that change and that transition. So they asked me to jump on board, and the rest is history. I guess the main difference is that in property and development, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of development in the way that they do things as opposed to, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I think that the marine industry is just lagging a little bit behind, but certainly catching up. And that was the case here at Sydney Boathouse, was that it just needed that forward movement into an automation, and what we're dealing with now with a lot being done on social media, internet, online, that just didn't exist at the time. And I think that that's the way of the future. And so it was a great opportunity to help the old owners transition.
I totally agree with you there. I think the boating industry has got a lot to learn from both property and, interestingly, the automobile industry as well. Both of them are well ahead of us in the game, I think, on technology and media and the styles and approaches that we take to business. So I think that's really great that you've brought those property skills to this industry. That's fantastic. You mentioned you manage a dry stack storage facility. Now, some of our listeners may not know what that is. Can you actually explain what that is?
Sure. So dry storage is a way of getting your boat out of the water and off trailers. So we have a fully enclosed, purpose-built dry storage building, which has a number of racks inside the building that houses vessels anywhere from 6 metres up to 11 metres. What it does is it allows for people to not have to trailer their boats to boat ramps, trailer them in traffic in and around Sydney. It's quite busy on a weekend on our roads. Taking a 8-metre boat on a trailer just adds to the frustration. We don't have a huge amount.
And that whole boat ramp battle, as well as I call it, it gets you away from that as well, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of boat ramps that have access to the harbour readily, and that adds to that boat ramp rage that they call it, and also the queuing early on a Saturday morning, the queuing to get down out at the ramp, a little bit insane. So dry storage keeps you out of the elements, off a trailer, and gives you a valet kind of service where you book your boat to the water, and we have purpose-built forklifts that come in, take the vessel from the rack in the housing and pop you in the water on your booking. And so that basically it's a walk-on, walk-off service. The boat's in the water when you arrive, away you go from the marina, and then when you come back, you simply click OK to store on our boat booking app, and we do the rest. We'll take it out of the water, we'll wash the boat, we'll flush the engines, we'll top it up with fuel if you request it, and then we put it safely back away in its home.
That sounds like my kind of boating. Yeah, just get it all done for you. That's what I say. I think dry stack is also saves you a lot of care in terms of it's under, especially at your facility. Not all dry stacks are undercover like yours, are they? So I think that's fantastic that they're continuously undercover and cared for, out of the elements, as it were. And also that whole element of the boat's there and ready to go for you when you get there. I think that's an advantage for women as well, because the boat ramp is a bit challenging. I'm not saying women aren't capable of doing it, but it can be heavy work, and it can be challenging to get that boat from that boat ramp, and you kind of need somebody else there as well to do that. It's very hard to do it on your own. So I think it allows people to use their boat just by themselves a bit more. Would you agree?
100%. I grew up boating every weekend with my family, and we didn't have dry storage. So we were at the boat ramps. Dad would reverse the boat down the ramp. Mum and my 2 sisters would be in the water, sort of sometimes, neck deep, holding the vessel, positioning it, and then, sort of floating it over to the sand, sanded area so that we could all get on while Dad took the trailer in the car and parked it.
Yes.
And whilst 3 of us women quite easily managed to do it, it still had its moments, a couple of bobs under the water as you're sort of treading water and floating the boat across to the beach. If dry storage had have been available, it would have been so much better.
Absolutely.
So much better. Great, we were in the water and we were already wet and we were ready to go, but being able to just walk on, walk off, not have to do that whole sort of positioning, guiding, getting the boat across from the ramp in, so that the next person could come down and, put their boat in. Dry storage is amazing for that.
Yeah.
You can literally park your car, walk down onto the marina, and the boat is there waiting for you. You can bring your kids now because you don't have that same, what we did back then. I certainly wouldn't expect my children under 10 to be able to do it. Bit of a different childhood. But yeah, to be able to walk on, put the kids in, pack the lunch, the esky, everything's there, and it's so easy. That's our motto, is easy boating. And we're in a beautiful bay in Sydney. It's very calm. We don't have wash in here, even when it's quite windy. Yep. It's perfect for you to be able to just walk on, like you said, and walk on off. And you can almost do it you can do it by yourself. You can walk on by yourself, take the boat out, and come back.
And I think it takes a lot of time out of it too, because really, if you're taking a trailer boat out for the day, you've got to dedicate a day to it. You can't just say, "Oh, we'll pop out on the boat for an hour and then come back," because you're contributing all of that time of getting to the boat ramp, taking the boat off the boat ramp, going and parking the car and finding a park for the car. So you've got to go early to get the park for the car and trailer, and then you've got to kind of give it a whole day to justify all of that effort, because when you come back, you've got to clean the boat, blah, blah, blah. Whereas with your service, you can almost say, "Oh, should we just book it to come down at 10 o'clock in the morning and off we go, have a couple of hours, come back, and then we just leave them to look after it again for us." I think it makes the whole process quicker and more enjoyable too. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More time boating, less time worrying about the hassle of boating. More time on the water, less time cleaning, flushing, all of those sort of end of trip chores that aren't necessarily as fun. Look, some people love tinkering on their boats and washing their boats, and we quite happily accommodate that. We'll bring the boat down, we'll pop it on a wash rack for our clients, and they're more than welcome to come down and wash and have a bit of a clean or tinker. We also have hoses on the marina, so when they come back, if there's sand or they want to just clean out the inside, the kids of chips and food or whatever, they can hose out the inside. We've got facility to do that. But I think what you're saying is that it's easy then to come down and take the boat out for a couple of hours as opposed to a whole day, especially because we have such great weather in Sydney. People are able to come down at, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We've still, in daylight savings in summer, we've still got quite a few hours left to enjoy the harbour. And, quite often late afternoon in Sydney Harbour is beautiful, still very warm, great to go for a swim. So we have quite a few of our clients will call sort of around lunchtime and say, "Look, Thursday afternoon, is it possible? Can I jump out for a couple of hours?" And we'll pop the boat in, and that's great. I mean, we're a hop, skip and a jump away from the CBD. So you could be in your office at midday, on the boat by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, cruising around the harbour.
That's awesome. Yeah, sounds like very easy boating to me. I'm a bit of the, I like the variety of you doing it for me, not me having to tinker and wash my boat. That's just me. But Tracy, how do you think your education has contributed to your role now in the boating industry? Do you think there are some particular skills you picked up in your education? Can you explain to us what your education is?
Sure. I started in corporate comms and public relations in insurance with AMP when I finished school. And I think working in public relations and corporate comms gives you a good understanding of the needs of your audience and your market, understanding the product that you're either selling or delivering. And I had, I did my cadetship with AMP while I was at uni and got to see a number of different areas, from investor relations through to corporate finance, corporate comms. We're on the speech writing team for our CEO to deliver messages to key stakeholders, the ASX. So it was really about communicating a vision, communicating understanding the market, communicating to those that we were delivering for, especially our shareholders. And I think that translates across to having a really good understanding of your client and your client needs, and having a passion for that, and then delivering on the product that you sell. I did that for a number of years before I had my children, and then once I had my children, I moved into property and construction. I think that prepared me in the sense that coming into the marina industry, it's very male dominated, but working in construction and property, you deal with a lot of men. I also have 2 sons, so I'm surrounded by them. But I think having that exposure was a great intro into coming across into the maritime industry, which is predominantly male. There is some wonderful women in the industry, but seeking them out is a bit of a challenge. I think definitely having that solid foundation in PR and comms helps a lot because I deal with clients all the time. And then coming into that property management, construction, the technical side, understanding the kind of engineering components, the site work. A marina, a working marina, isn't all glitz and glamour with beautiful super yachts. Whilst they are around, a lot of what we do is very manual. It's operational, and there's a huge sort of safety and risk component, and having that background from construction and development is great because they're leaps and bounds ahead of maritime. I shouldn't say maritime. I should say recreational boating. Maritime, I'm sure across this tenfold, but recreational boating is still a little bit lagging in sort of the safety. Not that it's unsafe, but in protocols and procedures compared to other industries like construction. So coming across from a very heavily regulated industry into recreational boating, it's been great to bring across some of that skill set.
So it sounds to me like your skill set involves a lot of communication skills, and I can certainly see that very evidentially in the way you put your brand across in social media. And do you think that communication helps you with your management style and how you manage your team as well?
Look, definitely. I have a style whereby I like to empower my employees and my team to come to work, to know what they need to do, and to get in and roll up the sleeves and get it done. If they need advice or they need instruction, then sing out by all means. My office is always open door policy, and I'm happy to jump in and give them a hand or guide. But generally, I don't like to micromanage. I think that we all know what we need to get done throughout a day. And look, we regularly meet up, but I think that coming from that background, I've worked with a lot of professionals throughout my career, and generally people want to come in and do a good job. And generally, for the most part, if you're working in the marine industry, it's because you want to, and so people just get on with it.
I agree. I think I'm lucky enough to have some magnificent team members as well, and I think trusting the process and trusting them to do what they're trained to do is very, very important. And they do have very different skill sets across the boating industry, from those that operate the travel lifts to those that do the anti-fouling to, there's so many different skills in the boating industry that we can explore and manage, isn't it? And I think that's what's wonderfully varied about this industry as well. There's so many different things going on all of the time. And your facility would be a perfect example of that. There's lots of things going on at the same time within the industry, which keeps your day interesting. Can you give us an idea of a day in the life of Tracy Souris at Sydney Boathouse?
Sure. Look, I think the best way to describe it is that no 2 days are ever the same. Depending on what time of the month it is, it depends on what tasks I'd be doing. So, end of the month, we've got a lot of commissions to work out, accounts to finalise. We do a monthly boat audit, and then there's billing. There's also our monthly hours, our safety report. So there's a lot of reporting at the end of the month that takes up a good chunk of my time. On any given day, I could be working on anything from new contracts to finalising agreements as people may vacate the facility, dealing with our broker requests or issues, and then also any sort of incidents that might arise in the operation. We often have yachts getting cranes and lifted into the water. So there's a lot of moving parts and moving pieces. So yeah, any 2 days are never the same. There's a lot of variety, and yeah, sometimes I'm at my desk for weeks on end doing reporting, strategy, marketing updates, and then other days I get an opportunity to be out on the marina and down on the docks and washing boats in the wash bay area. Just depends.
So that's fun all round. Yeah. I think that's another part of the industry. And you mentioned the word yachts there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to explain to our listeners, when we say yachts, we don't necessarily mean the type with the mast on top, because they don't actually go into dry stack storage, do they? Am I wrong there?
No. So our racing yachts stay on the hard stand. So we do have the dry stock, which we've got roughly about 220 at any given time. Generally coming into summer, we're at full capacity. But we also have our hard stand, which houses all of our broker vessels. So we have brokers down on site that sell boats, and they're on display out in our hard stand area. And then we have a number of racing yachts, and they are the ones with the masts, and they sit on very large cradles on our marina front, and we will crane those in and out of the water depending on racing events.
So you've got a variation of boats as well, and they go right from the little speed boats up to the big racing yachts. That's a pretty exciting range to be working with. And you're in an environment all the time that's surrounded by water, and of course we've got these fabulous super yachts alongside your facility as well in the Sydney Super Yacht Marina. How does that make you feel working in that environment all the time? Does it give you a certain sense of a sense when you get to work every morning, as it were?
I think working on the water is amazing. There is definitely a calming effect that the water has on an individual. Coming into the marina on a beautiful day like today, where the sun's reflecting off the water, there's a lot of activity down on the boats, there's boats moving, there's people going out and having a good time on the harbour. It actually is quite enjoyable. It really does resonate with this is a great place to work. There is definitely, like I said, a sense of calm that comes with working in the marine industry and working on water, especially if you get the chance to jump on a boat and pop over to Rose Bay.
Hopefully have lunch there as well.
For a coffee and a trip. But I've worked in towers in the CBD, fortunately some with views of the harbour, but now I'm actually working on the harbour, so even better. But yeah, it's a very different environment from being in a corporate office to being down at the marina, and one that's really quite pleasant. Even when it does rain, the water changes and the feeling changes, but there is still somewhat pockets where you can find that serenity once you sort of sit near the water.
I find, we've owned our marina at Bobbin Head for 15 years now, and a lot of the mornings I get there, I have to pinch myself that this is where I, in inverted commas, work. It's just a fabulous environment. I think we're really blessed in the boating industry that we work in such a lovely environment. And yeah, it has its rainy days, it has its cold, and sometimes we're down underneath an engine room or whatever we're doing. But I think a lot of the time, and it's not necessarily always glamorous, but I think we are so lucky to work in the environment that we do. And I think that's why I want to encourage so many people into this industry and kind of illustrate that it's there, because it is such a wonderful environment to work in. So if you were a woman trying to get into the boating industry, tell me how you might look at doing that. I know that's a very vague question, but...
Look, I think that if you come from a background of boating, or you've grown up on boating or around boats, there's a good chance that you will end up working in boating. There's just something that will draw you there. If you haven't, but you're keen, I think that there definitely needs to be some pathways that are advertised for women, for young people across the board to get into boating. if I had a direct pathway, or knew there was a direct pathway other than joining the Navy or stewarding on a boat, then I may have come across to the industry a lot earlier. But nothing ever was presented. So I think definitely, if you're interested, then seek out. It's not going to become apparent at school. It's not something that's advertised, although the BIA are doing some great things in that space in trying to push programs into, school leavers. But I think that there's such a talent pool of young people that, traditional boating has kind of, I don't know the exact word. It's been lost, I think, with the younger generation. So I think the cultural change in our communities, the expense and the cost of living has seen, a shift away from recreational boating necessarily being something that the whole family enjoys, as it was when I was growing up. And look, my parents were working class, we were working class family. They just happened to have a passion for it, and that was their hobby and their pastime. But yeah, I think it's about reintroducing boating to the younger generation, showcasing how easy it is and cost effective it can be, and getting people involved, and also the school projects, attracting people to the industry even post school. You can do a BA in marketing or comms and never even think about working in maritime or in boating, but it's such a great place to sort of land, or to position yourself. They've got great shows, international shows, boating events. There's a whole array of different jobs that are available in boating. It's just getting that message out there to people so that they know and they're aware of what they can do in this space if they'd like to.
I agree. It's getting them on their radar, as it were, isn't it? Now, you mentioned the BIA there. Just to explain to our listeners, that's the Boating Industry Association, and they are doing some brilliant work at the moment with apprentices. So, and in creating more apprenticeships, which is really great, because we are actually a little bit short in the skill set in Australia in the shipwright space, the mechanic space, all of that sort of thing at the moment. So I think it's really important that we make schools and TAFEs and so on, and TAFE's doing a lot of work at the moment as well, which is fantastic, about exposing the boating industry to potential employees as well, which is fantastic. So, Tracy, just talking about the boating lifestyle as an activity, if you like, I personally feel that boating is absolutely fantastic for families, and especially in the world that we live in now, where a lot of kids are permanently attached to a screen. I think taking them out on a boat is a really different activity for kids, and gives them some freedom and skill sets they may not achieve otherwise. Can you just go into a little bit of a detail about how you feel about that?
I agree. Screen time is a problem. I have two sons, one 21, one 15, both game, and spend a lot of time on the computers. 15-year-old, understandably so, he's doing a lot of schoolwork, and everything these days is done via online learning and online assessment uploads, very different to schooling when I was at school. So I understand he sets a fair bit of time in front of that computer screen for school. But yes, gaming, interacting with friends, that social component of life has certainly changed. COVID hasn't helped, but boating definitely gives young people an opportunity to clear their minds from that sort of online space. I take my sons chartering each year up in North Queensland.
Oh, beautiful.
And, seeing them get behind the wheel, tie knots, get a good understanding of your own spatial awareness comes, I think, from boating. It's almost like jumping on the trampoline without those nets around it. You kind of get a real sense of how far you can go to the edge before you plonk off. It's similar with boating. You know, it gives children and people a very good sense of self, the awareness of the space around you, safety skills, testing your own limits. You know, kids love jumping off the bow of boats and flipping off the fly bridge into the water. But in order to do that, there's a little bit of a self-risk assessment. So a lot goes on in just doing those fun activities when you're boating, because there is that element of risk, and kids have a good idea of that limitation, personal limitation, when it comes to assessing risk when they're about to do some crazy stuff sometimes. So I think definitely boating is, it's good for a number of reasons. Getting them out of the house, getting them out and away from the front of the screens, teaching them new skills, whether it be navigation, whether it be tying knots, ropes, putting fenders out, driving, anchoring. There's a whole array of skills that come with boating. And I think that translates to, sort of character building and development. And look, my son casually works down at the marina now while he's at uni. He drives boats around for our clients, drives the forklifts, definitely gives kids, a good foundation of learning.
That was a beautiful analogy, the trampoline with no nets around it. I love that. That was so good. And I think that is a perfect illustration of what boating is. It's that freedom of even the driving the boats. Driving a car is very much more close quarters and more likely to hit it than when you first learn to drive a boat. And kids can, of course, learn to drive boats a lot earlier than they can cars as well in our regulation terms. So I think that's absolutely fantastic that kids get into boating and learn so much, and the freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun. Like if you drive, anything from, personal watercraft like a jet ski, a Sea-Doo to, jumping on and driving a large cat. It's fun. There's element of, like you said, freedom, water splashing, getting wet, flinging, so yourself into the waves. It's a little bit like your mind is free. And to be honest, you have to focus while you're out on the water. You're not focusing on a game or, sort of who's online, waiting for that next, sort of move in FIFA or something. You're actually focusing on your surrounds. You're focusing on the water, the wind, what the tides are doing. So, but it's a pleasant focus as opposed to an intense or, sort of heavy focus. It's a freeing focus.
I agree. And it's also, I think it's a sense of power they get too. I mean, I know my boys when they were younger, suddenly being able to influence the power of 960 horsepower is pretty exciting, and being responsible for that as well, I think obviously you're standing beside them when they're at the helm, but that is a really exciting thing for a kid to be able to do. And the jet skis too, the personal watercrafts, as we should officially call them, they're just so much fun for the kids to get out there, and I'd much rather have them on one of those than on a motorbike, I've got to say, as a mother. And I just think that boating is a an exploration that kids can get into and really feel the power of the wind when they're sailing. And it's a respect for nature as well. It's teaching them that, you can't go out when the tides are doing this and the wind's doing that and whatever. So it's a recognition that they've got to make some responsible decisions before they do it as well. So I think boating's fabulous for kids. I really do. So Tracy, I know you go regularly chartering in the Whitsundays, which is a stunning boating area. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there and perhaps a couple of your favourite places you've been in that area?
Sure. The Whitsundays is beautiful. Like, everybody knows that the Barrier Reef is just gorgeous. The best thing about chartering and boating in the Whitsundays is that you get a sense of being somewhere completely remote, but yet you're still very close to land and all the services, amenities, if anything goes wrong. There's some beautiful bays, great for snorkeling. Whitehaven Beach has to be, the most stunning stretch of sand. I would highly recommend that to anybody. I mean, most people will go visit if they head up that way, but it's definitely beautiful. Opposite to that is another beach called Chalkies, and that's quite lovely to stop in and do some snorkeling. It's the same sand as Whitehaven, very white, pristine, absolutely beautiful, a lot of turtles. And on the other side of Whitehaven, there is an island called Esk, which has no sand. It's completely a beach of coral, which is crazy. It almost looks like bones from a distance because it's all white. But when you get on it, it's stunning in its own right. And there's another little bay off Esk where it's beautiful for snorkeling. It's not highly advertised, but it's kind of like one of those secret spots where you see the large clams with the bright blues and the fish. It's just amazing.
I think that's another advantage of boating again, is you can get to these places that you can't get to them otherwise. And especially for families with children, it's spaces where there might not be anybody else. So they're not fighting for space at the playground. They're just enjoying an incredible environment. Now, I know you've got a bit of a funny story and the Whitsundays to share with us, with a bit of a survivor moment for you. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. We took some friends one Christmas and we sailed around Whitsundays, and at first I thought it was a butterfly, but it's Catamaran Bay, which is the next one along. So we pulled up and we dropped anchor at Catamaran Bay for the evening, and a stunning bay again for snorkeling. And we were on a catamaran that was made in France, and so all of the panels were in French. We had an induction, and so we knew what we needed to use and turn on and turn off. But unfortunately, our friends hadn't had the induction. And so in the middle of the night, one of the party got up and was walking and managed to turn off some of the switches on the panel.
Oh.
And which meant that the next morning we woke up with no power, and we weren't quite sure what switches, because they were in French and we'd had the induction about 3 days earlier. So we kind of had an idea of, what we might need to turn on, but nothing seemed to work. Fortunately, that anchor wasn't on the same line, so we got the anchor up. And then we decided that the best thing to do, because we had no reception, radios were off, of course, because they were attached to the main system. And this was early in our chartering experiences. And we sailed. We sailed back from Catamaran Bay around to Hamilton Island, which is quite a few hours.
So it's a brave thing to do without any navigation equipment.
Yeah, no navigation, although we did have the charts, so we did pull those out and have a look and see sort of what were the obstacles along the way that, we didn't want to get shipwrecked and end up like Gilligan's Island somewhere. And it was bad weather, so it wasn't great. It was windy. There was a little bit of a swell. And if you've ever been at the top of Whitehaven coming in with northeasterly winds, it's pretty scary.
It's a bit of a washing machine there, isn't it?
It's a washing machine. Yeah. Waves were, crashing over the back of the boat, crashing over the front as we nosedived through the passageway. Part of that passageway gets quite swirly as well. So, it was a bit gnarly. The kids all bunkered down and head into the cabins. They were like petrified we were all going to die. Fortunately,
I shouldn't laugh when you say that, should I?
Fortunately, of course, we didn't. And surprisingly so, my husband and I remained quite calm throughout the whole ordeal and just pushed forward, knowing that we were going to get to Hamo soon enough. And then, of course, we got to Hamilton Island. The sun came out, the wind disappeared. It was like we entered into, a parallel universe. And after the turmoil that we went in getting there, radioed through to the charter company, and basically they just told us to flick one switch and everything went back on. So we actually hadn't we hadn't damaged the boat, we hadn't broken anything.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we just failed to turn the right switch on, and we had a very interesting sailing experience. Mind you, neither my husband nor I are actually sailors.
Oh, wow.
So putting up sails on a large cat and getting through what we thought was, sort of 10 hours was really only about 4. But
it just felt like 10.
10 hours of, crazy swells, wind, overcast weather, no navigation. We made it out. We came out the other side, and we can look back and laugh at it now.
Yeah, they always make good dinner party stories, don't they? The boating stories that went a little bit wrong.
Yeah, and we haven't actually invited that friend back since.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
and I think there's a little just element in there for our boat designers out there. Could we please label all of the electronic panels in English if we're selling it into an English market?
That would be helpful.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's a great story. So Tracy, you and I are lucky enough to be in this fabulous boating industry, and we enjoy what we do thoroughly. And because of that, we're really keen to get more women into this industry. Do you think there are some initiatives that we can put forward to work on that?
Definitely. There is definitely an opportunity for those of us who currently work in the industry to create pathways, to create opportunities for other women to enter the industry. Currently, we are working with the BIA, Boating Industry Association, on developing a Women in Boating Committee, which we've set up. It's in its initial stages now, as you know, designed specifically for this purpose. Creating awareness, creating pathways, increase diversity, change the landscape that we currently see in recreational boating, and encourage more women to come into the industry.
So Tracy, you and I both enjoy working in the boating industry, and it is, as we've said, a male-dominated industry, but I don't think that's anything to do with the guys in it. I think they actually want to encourage more women into that industry, but I do think we do have to have a little certain amount of strength to be in the boating industry, same as many other industries that are male-dominated, to gain that respect from other members of the industry. You as a person, when you were growing up, do you think there's some elements to your upbringing that have helped you with that strength and that character that you have?
Definitely. My dad was ex-Air Force, so we had a very strict upbringing. Also a very much of a no nonsense, can-do approach to life. I think like anything, when it's new or you're the first, it always is a little bit daunting. And I guess, like you said, there's nothing sinister about the industry or the men that are in it, which makes it male-dominated. It's just the way it is. And I think with people, with more women coming into the industry, it's more about firsts as opposed to there being a problem with it. There's not been women and now there is. So when you're the first and you're amongst the few, yeah, you do have to have a little bit of an element of gusto about yourself to sort of forge through and not get sidetracked or bothered by the fact that you may be doing it solo. We have had a couple of female staff, and, you know, currently at the moment we don't, but we're always looking for women to come on board at Sydney Boathouse.
I mean, you know, I remember sailing with my dad in England and it was freezing cold and we just got on and did it. You know, that's what we did. Yeah. And it taught you a toughness, I think, that a lot of kids don't get these days.
Yeah, I think that definitely that mental toughness is a positive quality in any career. I think people are scared, and my upbringing is that it's okay to laugh at yourself. It's okay to have a sense of humour about your misfortunes or misgivings, whether that's a typical sort of Australian larrikin kind of trait. But I think it's definitely stood me well, is that, well, I take my job and my role quite seriously. I don't take myself too seriously. You know, I'm happy to have a laugh. Yeah, I make mistakes and do silly things from time to time. That's okay.
We learn so much from our mistakes, don't we?
Yeah. Look, we didn't know what switch to push on a boat that we'd been inducted to and got shown how to do it all, and then failed to recall which switch we were meant to push or meant to flick back on. But yeah, we survived.
Yeah.
Lived to tell the tale.
Yep.
Had an interesting time. Learnt that we weren't going to invite certain people out with us again because they were too risk aversion, not bringing them. But yeah, I do think that having a good solid background or upbringing of laughing at yourself, commitment and dedication to the things that you're passionate about, roll your sleeves up, can do, jump in there attitude. I think that in any industry, but particularly in boating, but in any industry, sees you fare relatively well. And it's good to do something that you enjoy and you can have a bit of fun with. Doesn't always have to be, you know, serious and all about the work. You've got to have those moments where it's a bit about the fun too.
And I agree. I think the boating industry does have a little bit more of that for us all because we're by the water, because we're on boats. We get a little bit more of that fun and enjoyment side to our work than lots of other industries would do. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tracy. It's been great talking to you, and I hope you have a fabulous time at Sydney Boathouse. It's been we've learnt a lot, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always a joy, and I hope the podcast series goes well.
Thank you. So since Tracy and I spoke in May, there has been an initiative that has been launched now for positions in the boating industry, which is called marinejobs.org.au. This is an initiative that's been put together by the Boating Industry Association, the Marina Industries Association, and Super Yacht Australia, which is a specific site for boating industry businesses to advertise their positions on and people looking for work in the boating industry to look at. So that's marinejobs.org.au. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Boat Princess podcast. It has been lovely having you here. As always, I truly appreciate you listening, and I would love it if you could do a review of the podcast. I truly enjoy reading how much it inspires you and what lessons you've learned out of the podcast or what really you related to within them. It's really lovely to get some feedback from my audience to understand how we're helping you, and also let us know how you'd like us to help you. If there's particular people you'd like us to interview or particular subjects you'd like us to cover, we'd always like to hear from you. So a review really makes a difference to us. If you'd like to see more detail about some things that we talk about in the podcast, go to my website, theboatprincess.com, and if you sign up for my newsletter, you can actually receive a code that gives you free access to Ocean Magazine digital version until January 22, and also a discount code on the Ross and Whitcroft clothing site. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Pommery Champagne Australia and Ross and Whitcroft. And I hope we truly are inspiring you to get out on the water soon or become part of our amazing boating industry. Take care, and I'll see you on the water soon.